Okay, Marja, we are in the live now. Hello.
Hello. So what happens when an old Finnish book telling about the health and well-being stretching method called Method Putkisto finds an English artist? How do we get together and what happens next?
Summers come and summers go. This one's very special though. Let go of what you think you know, and you can put a kiss upon a toe.
Warm welcome, Marja.
Thank you. And warm welcome for Alaina Foster to our Putkisto show. This is about a moment we get. Are you there? Yeah. How are you?
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here with you. Thank you.
Welcome and lovely to see you alive, because this is actually the first time we talk. Isn't it, Alaina? And we spoke about it, that this is like an old-fashioned way of meeting like in a correspondence times, because we met via the old book. And before I get started, if you don't mind, I would love to introduce you a little bit. So where about in England are you? Where do you live?
Yeah, so on the map of Britain, there's the bumpy outbeat, East Anglia, and I'm from the most easterly point, a place called Lowestoft.
Oh, great. Anyway, you are an artist, and you told your story to me, and please correct me if I'm right, but you told me that how you suddenly, in an adult age, you decided to get into the opera and ballet, and out of the blue begin to follow them. Got very inspired, decided to get into the art, and you described me how you suddenly got fascinated on the three-dimensional aspect of the art. You begin to explore movement. You go to the old shop and you find my book, which is honestly really old. And if I look at the hideous cover, it's already really strange. Hardly the pictures. I mean, look at this. Look at this guy who's hanging in front of these stones. And then you come and find me, and that's where the modern world comes along. You find me via Facebook, enter to my classes, and you've been there every single week. And suddenly this old book, and you always come back and say, hey, this is your book. And I was thinking, what is in that book? And in fact, so I'd love to tell you a little bit of the story of the book, because it actually is a classic from Finland, but it's not really printed in a very fancy way, is it? It's a cheap paper, and so what in the earth happened? Why did you got fascinated? You told me the story about the movement. Actually, that's way how it goes. You told me that it was the turning point for you was going to a ballet.
It was I just fell in love with not coming from a dancing background and how they moved, and it was just so fluid, and it really caught you here how it made you feel watching them. It wasn't just movement, there was something they were conveying something. And I'm just so lucky I managed to find you, really. And with your book, which I call my Bible, I use it every day. With your book, how you have these really like artistic, these such beautiful pictures. They're really powerful in themselves. But this bit as well, how you had the drawings, and from the drawings that actually conveyed the intent, like even though that's more factual, but it was that part for me. And that
made you realize. And then we had a little discussion that the next version of the same book already looks far more modern, which is now called 30-day program. And you see, these are bit by bit explained pictures. So they are matter in fact. And then you mentioned, and I said, well, you mentioned something that what was important for you, where I'm actually thinking, people want answers, they want clarity. And you kind of came back and said, no, not necessarily. And you talked something about your learning of movement, which is completely new. So what happened? You said that maybe to get lost is necessary. Guaranteed in my classes, isn't it?
Well, I was so fortunate how because I do think we need to have guidance because we wouldn't be able to, the stuff you found, we wouldn't be able to figure that out by ourselves. But with the information that you've given us, we're able to follow that, but it's not giving us step by step. So we still have that opportunity where if we go a little bit too far this way or a little bit too far that way, while within what you've taught us, even if we go a little bit too far, we get to learn from our own mistakes, and that by doing that, we then know what the right way is. Yeah, if that makes sense. So,
and although the pictures are this crazy here, then he's hanging between two cliffs, isn't it? And we talk about elongating your waistline, isn't it? Stretching your waistline. But I didn't have to write there, don't go between the two cliffs. Be aware. Yeah, and it's quite matter of fact. The text is quite, muscle targets is always, it's quite matter of fact, the text. But what it did, and I promised to tell you a story behind the book. Well, without you knowing, you found me, and that was a time when in Britain, Mr. Motivator was a big name. I know, and he was great, of course. But I began to pay attention that no one was in relation to anything. The aerobics, we speeded up the music, so there was no longer music. They only counted beats. Then we had these great leotards, and everyone was like, me, my body, and my kilos, and my abdominals, and so on. But there is no interaction to another person, and neither the space. You see, we move in space, and I decided I'm going to do a book where what I think will be seen in the pictures. And in fact, I photographed all these tones because in Finland we are after ice time. We have the ice moved the rocks, and you can find pinks and blues and greens and beautiful rocks. And it's one of the oldest rocks in the world, which is granite. Well, it just turned out that you see the little stripe in the rock, which is yellow, and she had a beautiful. Never came out except with this cheap version, and I was heartbroken. Okay, I had 50 models, and they were from our opera, our dancers. So you didn't know that, first of all. But the photographer, Kari Hakli, he photographed movement and ballet 25 years. So he specialized capturing the movement. And he was very specific that these pictures cannot be manipulated in any form or format. So there is no photoshopping whatsoever anywhere. And when the book actually came out, people were irritated. What is this? Is it some sort of an art book, or what it is? So no one could place it anywhere. And still today, it's been the most sold book ever in this field in Finland. And the actual program developed to this more modern version, and right next week. This was in 1993 when I started working on this. And on January, the 30-day program was taught by 200 people, and now there is already 120, and it starts next week, isn't it? So it's interesting that you find the book, you find me, and something in this text talks to you. But I wanted to tell you also that you said the pictures talks to you, but you can't hardly see them because they're almost black. Yet there is something. And tell me more about, because then you went on to the art. And you talk about the methodized actors. And you said that's not a usual term for the artist, but you see yourself as a methodized artist. Tell a little bit more about that. I think that was really, maybe you can define what is methodized actor first.
I'll try my best.
Yeah, well.
I think like with like I had a great aunt Fanny. She was my great auntie, and she was an actress, and so I think I got a little bit of that theatricalness from her. And so when I was looking at doing art, it wasn't enough to look at movement. I wanted to be able to feel the movement so that I was able to then convey that through my art, whether that be sort of a 2D or if it was a sculpture, whatever it was. But I knew I needed to be able to feel it before I could then give it to others. And so it was really just trying to, experience that. And I hadn't been able to experience it until I found you. And I'm just so grateful, because through sort of being able to move in that way, not as far as ballerinas by any stretch of the imagination, but by being able to move in a fluid way, it really got me able to get into that mind frame and creating some art where, because I felt it, I was able to then produce it, if that makes sense.
It does. So you were able to kind of get the essence. And it's interesting because to tell you the truth, the body can't do very many movements. You can do forward bend, back bend, side bend, and rotation. And that's why often the books look very boring. All the exercise books looks the same. And we're all desperately trying to make it different. But you can't safely do so many different movements. Depends on your joints, how far you can go, and so on. But when you anchor it to expression, it's totally another story. But when it's about exercise book, what kind of expressions can you have? You say ouch, or you look aesthetic, but it's the environment. And the elements we're working with the method is weight, and there is a stone describing the weight. But stone or basic rock, granite, is also describing time. Is the oldest one. And we understand as a human something which you don't have to write down. You just feel it. And then there is another element which is space. And that's why it's interesting. Only when you know where your center line is, you know how far you are or distances from the others. So I was able to kind of describe a relationship with the space. If you look at some of the pictures, that there is a person forward, and then there is beautiful architecture from London, which sadly makes it very clear where is the center line. But you don't have to draw it even, you can see it, because she is in relation to the building, where the center line is obvious how it travels through her. And then there is breathing or flow, and that's of course the sea or water, but also light when it moves, but it's also rhythm. Light is also rhythm and timing. And once you build those elements and the model is together with the surrounding, that became to resonance to you. So that's why, Lisa, you are asking that, how did you get it? Because, these are not exactly health and fitness magazine book. And there's plenty around, and it's been always a one-off strange book. So now when you talked about you need to go behind it So you obviously are using imagery and you're using, your own senses for it, isn't it? And then you came to the question about how disconnected we are from the time. You said we are more and more disconnected. Can you say something? Tell me more about it. It was really disconnected from nature, disconnected from each other. So that's when we kind of share some of the views. What were your thoughts?
Yes, it was through a new project. Because again, so grateful to you, because when I was doing the class, you were saying about it releases energy, and it really, really did. So my usual energy was running about here. Suddenly it's up here, and I'm waking up in the morning. I'm like, yes, I'm gonna make things, and I was really, on fire. So I'm so indebted to you. But one of the new projects on this curve was I was thinking about how we, up until sort of really the Industrial Revolution, we were very much, living with nature, and we were, we had evolved to live with the plants, with our environments. Everything was in a balance. And then it appears to me that we then started relying on technology, and I feel now so far away from being in touch with nature. So I think I was really interested in the idea of being able to get back in balance with nature, being able to heal ourselves. And I was looking at sort of plants and different things to bring us back into balance. But I was really curious as well about how you had created this balance in what you do, and being able to heal yourself. And I was absolutely fascinated by that. I know you touched on it in your book.
Yeah, and I think maybe, Alaina, here we come together because a big word is intuition, and the internal knowledge we already have written in us. As you said, do you become an artist, or you just begin to use yourself so that the artist in you comes out, I was born hip out of place. So basically I was held in a static position first year of my life. And then I was considered to be okay, everything was okay. And I never learned anything. I didn't learn to swim. I didn't learn to ride the bike. I didn't learn, throwing the ball. I couldn't. I never understood why. And don't even ask me, how did I end up doing ballet? And I had a ballet teacher who was able to see through me. And he said to me, I take you, but you will never be away from the ballet. So I'm Vakanova trained, old-fashioned Vakanova trained. I went 3 times a week to ballet, I think, 12 years. I was really small, and I went with a bus and whatever. And I never, when we did the pirouettes, I always thought, here I go. And I ended up to somewhere else in the room. And he never gave up. Don't ask me how did I end up with a professional class. I still don't know. When I went to ski hill, I ended up to the forest and everybody. Anyway, I was about 25 when I realized my bones are in the wrong place. I should be pulled apart literally and replaced every single bone, pop out the head and put it back. And that's what we do. we are elongating the 2 short muscles. And those days it was unheard of that elongation or stretching could make you stronger. Now whole world is doing yoga. But in 1993, when I started doing this, no one had even heard about it. And it's still a little bit our concept that, if you... but then there is one element which interests me, and I think we come together, which I call it blindness. And as you said, I've never done it, and I try this and I try that, and then I find my way. But when you don't have the early childhood muscle memory, it doesn't build into your brain. And that's when the method, the point line system came along. That at least if you if you touch your nose, you know this point. If you then touch your back of your neck, you have 2 points, and you know from where to where. Or you have one muscle, it has 2 endings. You lean on it, you breathe into it, and then the bones move further away. And yes, your shoulder is in a new place. So it's a very, very simple concept as such. But most of all, what began to interest me is how I rebuilt a relationship with my embodied my identity. And I think in a way, when you said intuition, something in your identity, and you mentioned it also, Lisa, is you want to express yourself some way. We need to have that need. So that's it. So I needed myself, and I pulled the bones apart, and I replaced them, and I'm fine. I'm enjoying my movements now. And I think I know my body now. But of course, it's never ending, and the method became bigger than I am. Of course, it's been our ongoing institute, been going on many years, and we have training and so on. But what do you think about when you start working on the art? You are able to be in this unknown, isn't it, Alaina? You never know the end result.
But I think that's what is so wonderful about, the same as like with your book, how it wasn't explicit, do this, do this, do this, do this. You gave us, the idea. You had given us the outline of it, how to do it. But in the same way as the art, you've got your idea, but you don't know exactly how it's going to go, and you kind of feel your way through. Like I say, you might go a little bit too far this way, a little bit too, and you kind of get your way back to that point where it just feels right, if that makes sense.
That makes so sense, Alaina. And I think our time is up, but I think this very last sentence was the absolute core. That are we over nurturing? Are we over teaching? Are we over protecting so that we can't ever learn anything more? That's why we're missing so many experiences. What do you think, Lisa? You can say it in Finnish. I can trust it. Like, are we overdoing things so that we do it right instead of? What do you think?
Me voisimme kuunnella enemmän omaa kehoamme ja luottaa siihen kehoon.
Trust more. It's all in here. Everybody equally. Yes. Alaina, thank you so much. It was beautiful to meet you in person. And maybe you can get the next book.
It's on my list.
I see you online, and have a lovely, lovely weekend for everybody. And Lisa, thank you. And
thank you.
Soon. Bye.
Bye bye.
Thank you very much.
Summers come, summers go. This one's very special though. Let go of what you think you know.